Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on everybody's favorite topic, the federal budget. And we got some great discussion that is going to happen here very shortly. Definitely some time has been spent on just not only dissecting what came down last week, but also what do you do about it and what can we do about it? And maybe what should they have done, perhaps? And so we'll get into this in a couple of minutes, but just a little bit of announcement pieces here. We've got our high performance leasing workshop and how to hire and train and compensate leasing professionals coming up. And we do have a webinar in May centered around the opportunities for restructuring new apartment construction financing. Hopefully that won't be tied to the budget. But anyways, that's coming up, and we will end at the end of the year with our live event at the Toronto Real Estate Forum on December 3rd, and that is the apartment development and affordable housing event. And just so you know, we will have the chat box open. We are in webinar meeting mode. So if you have any questions, make use of that chat box, and our panelists will monitor that. We'll bring up anything that's relevant there. If we have some time at the end, we may even address the Q&A towards that back half of the webinar as well. Similarly, the recording of today's webinar we will make available on the landing page. You'll see a follow-up email coming out after the webinar where we will just provide verification of that. So here's what's on tap for this afternoon. It's all about the budget, and we're going to talk about what kind of budget it is and has been. A little bit of highlight strategy discussion. That'll be the bulk of today's content, and a little bit of insight about what we think they could have done if they were looking to maximize the impact in today's scenarios. And we'll conclude, and as I said, we will handle any Q&A if timing does permit. Now, to kick things off, we thought we'd just get a pulse on our audience today. And so we can go ahead and run this poll live here, Sarah, please. What was your reaction when you first read, watched, heard of, and dissected last week's federal budget? So if we can go live with that, Sarah, and give me a thumbs up if that's out there being answered. And we'll just give it a minute or so while everybody just responds to that. And that way we get a good idea. And I think we got a good, inkling of where this is going to land. And Sarah, as soon as that kind of wraps up here in the next few seconds, let's just display the results so our panelists and all of our attendees can see where the general consensus came in at. All right.
I think that's not a surprise, right, to anybody. Everyone on here is a business person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. All right. Well, let's move ahead here, Derek. And, we've got Derek who just chimed in there. We have Laura Gurr, she's a partner at Cohen Hiley, and she'll be giving some great insights, spends a lot of time inside of this industry. Michelle Durand, he's here from Toronto, and he'll be talking about the financial side. He's the wizard behind the numbers. And Fran Hohall, our director of research, she does that. She runs all of our research here at SVN Rock Advisors, and definitely spent some good time dissecting where we are at with this budget. So, Derek, I'm going to turn things on over to you, and maybe you can kick things off for us, please.
So just as a quick summary, the capital gains issue is a negative, but nothing here really moves the needle, right? And we'll talk about this later on, but it looks like the government wants to solve this problem itself, right? And look, all our housing got built by the private sector. You need to harness the private sector. So I haven't seen it being really helpful to builders. And there is some indirect support here in places, and we'll go through that with people. But I think everybody realizes that, and that's why 90% of you said this was either neutral to not positive. Okay, so Fran, why don't you just walk the next 5 slides or so and just talk about what's happened here?
Sure. So in summary, it's about more spending, as Derek said, plus more taxation. So on the housing sector alone, there's $52 billion budgeted for that, and $8.25 billion is new spending for the housing sector, and that's to create just under 4 million new homes in the next 5 years. So when we look here at what we've spent in the past, you can see that the federal government has invested about $5.5 billion annually. This is primarily on CMHC programs over the last 9 years. And those investments, you can see, have really ramped up since COVID. In terms of new housing on purpose-built rentals, We can see here who's building what. So we have about 43,000 new purpose-built rental housing starts since in this past year in 23, most of them being in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal.
And Fran, that is a tiny number to what we need, right?
Yeah, but this is just 2023.
Yeah.
And at the end of 23, again, at the end of last year, there were 34,000 announced projects, and those projects were supported through the apartment construction loan program. Again, most of them in Ontario and in BC.
Brandon, this is number of units.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And if you're talking about homes here, you can see that we've averaged about 200,000 new home starts annually. Previously, from 06 to 014, we were in that range. That's bumped up to about 225,000 in the last 9 years or so. You can see in 21, we peaked at about 280,000, but we dipped again. We're back down to 225,000. So we're not moving the needle as much as we need to move it on that side. So this is kind of what has been announced. These are 4 programs that have been announced in the budget. Most of it is about new funding to boost more construction. So we've got a $15 billion top up on the apartment construction loan program. We've got some new spending, $6 billion. This is the feds announcing a Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, basically to put in water, sewer, etc. But that comes with some caveats with the provinces have to do certain things in order to get that money, like freeze development fees for 3 years and also agree to fourplexes and things like that. That has caused a bit of push and pull. And then we've got about, of that 6 billion, 5 billion is for the provinces, about $1 billion is being directed specifically to municipalities. And that's to address their infrastructure needs for projects this year that are shovel ready. And you've also got a housing accelerator fund. This is a top up again, $400 million to that. And a new Canada rental protection fund. And that's for nonprofits, basically to get them to acquire more rental units across Canada and ensure that they stay affordable.
Okay, Fran, can we just comment on each one of these now from the speakers, right?
Sure.
And look, what is it going to make an apartment builder or a home builder read the budget and the next morning say to his CFO, say to his VP of construction, let's go out and build some apartments, right? So it looks like, and look, we want to be as positive as we can here, but when you top up a program and I'm the developer, I don't think the program's running out. I just assume it's there, right? So you say, okay, put a program in place. And then you say, well, big deal, we've topped it up, right? Well, I already knew about the program, so that's not an incentive for me to go out there and do something. Michelle, Laura, comment on what I just said. Am I just like getting too old for this business and getting curmudgeon? Or is that like a realistic view of it?
I think we're all getting too old for this,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's our knowledge and experience in the market that allows us to provide some good insight to the builders here. So I think you're absolutely right. The builders are saying, well, that doesn't change anything. For the last 3 years, I've been counting on this. How am I going to build more using the exact same program? That additional top up actually comes with a few strings that have suggested that they're going to improve the access to those funds. Nobody knows what that really means, but they've highlighted a few things, and I'll read them out. They're going to launch a frequent builder program, which means if you've been building over the last 3 years and doing this, they're going to streamline the process for you. They're going to provide additional flexibility on how to qualify for affordability, energy efficiency, and accessibility. And they're going to introduce a portfolio approach, which means they'll be more flexible to allow you to build more projects at the same time. And let me qualify that. Right now, if you've got I don't know, $5 million in equity. That equity will allow you to build only so many units through the program because there's a minimum equity required. If you're in a position to say, hey, I could build twice the amount of units, they're suggesting that they'll be more flexible on that. So I think topping up the program does nothing. They really need to follow through to show us how they're going to motivate the builders to have easier access, quicker access to these funds, because getting into the program is not that easy.
Yeah. Laura, what are your comments?
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you know, we've heard before from the feds and from CMHC that they're going to make the program easier to access and make it make sense for the private sector. I will say, just anecdotally, some CMHC staff, I think, are very excited about some of these administrative changes. So I've had clients, mainly on the nonprofit side, but clients where CMHC staff have been calling saying, when's your next project? When can you get an application in? Things are going to be better this time. So, you know, I am optimistic that some of these regulatory changes that are happening, some of these tweaks to the program's not changing, but the program is a good program if you can get in it. It's the getting in it part that we need to see improvements on.
Yeah, and Laura, it's a good program, but the good program, which you already have, has not created the burst of housing we need. Right?
And that's those barriers. That's because it's hard to get into it. So they need to make it easier to get in.
Well, wait. Has it been those barriers, or has it been, look, the way things are set up right now, this is a modest return thing to do. And yeah, for sure, if you're prepared to build and hold it for 10, 20, 30 years, we know it's golden. Okay. But nobody wants to build something that at the end of 2, 3, 4 years of pain, you're going to just get an okay return. Do you see my point?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things happening at the same time that did not help the result of the program. The result of the program was meant to support a lot more builds, and the builds have slowed down because they don't make as much sense in this higher rate environment.
Yes.
So the program has to adapt to the current rate environment that we live in, and that's really what's, you know, holding back the builders. If the rates were what they were 2 years ago, there'd be a lot more projects getting built. And, you know, a friend suggested we're at 225,000 units a year. You know, we have to quadruple that per year to meet these objectives.
Yeah.
If something isn't done to sort of mitigate the interest rate environment, all these monies and these amazing programs with MLI Select and what CMHC is offering gets, you know, sort of mitigated too much negatively.
Yes, and amazing may have been too much of a statement, Michelle, but I'll leave that alone. They're decent enough programs on. Okay, Fran, should we be commenting on anything else here before we move on to the next one?
No, it's all good.
Okay,
the next
good.
one is just more about getting more affordable homes built faster. So it's aimed at advancing research and innovation and productivity and so on within the housing sector itself. So, you know, it's around trying to put a fund together and then leverage the private sector to match that fund or excel on it. So different programs, but it's not a lot of money. This is $600 million.
Yeah, and let's just put this in. Yeah, let's put this into perspective. We're talking about, like, you know, we sell apartment communities for $100-200 million. Like, we're not like one community, so we're really not talking about very much money here. This is sort of window dressing on it's $1 trillion at the end of the day problem, right? So this is just little tinkering, and fine, somebody's going to come with a better way to put in a window well, okay, or something like that in the basement. But
well, a lot of the modular homes and so on, trying to get those into play quicker.
Yes.
I think we see technologies in other areas of the world. You know, when you look at China and Japan, how quickly they build their real estate. They're not smarter than us. You know, they're just using the technology that's available. We seem to hesitate to adopt those new technologies and make it easier and quicker to build. We're old dinosaurs and comfortable in the rut that we've been in the way we're building. I think we're starting to see some openness with the younger builders and the generational builders today, looking at that a little bit more. So the modular building is a great example of that.
You know, Michelle, I spent a fair bit of time looking into modular housing, right? I brought a progressive builder to a modular guy, and it was a modular home builder in Quebec, and it was in the Ottawa area, so it wasn't a huge transportation problem and so on. The problem was the municipality. They didn't know how to, and so they made the developer jump through hoops, right? So it's not like, look, developers are entrepreneurs. They'll be creative when they can make money. Fair enough. So, so yes, everybody wants to do the same thing over and over again, right? Swing the hammer the same way. But if they can make more money doing modular, they'll do it, right? Who's speaking? It's Derek Lobo here, okay? Sorry, someone asked that. Yeah, because he's having camera problems. But you see my point, right? So even if we go over to Japan or China, and they have China particularly, they have incredible building systems, right? Once you put in the horizontal services, you can put like a 20-story building up in 3 weeks, just bizarre stuff. They go 24 hours a day, and da-da-da-da-da. But we would have to break so many of our social, right, and municipal work ethic, just mind, so many things have to change.
And financial, the financing of the projects need to get adapted. The modular technology where you're building the systems, the walls and the rooms inside a large warehouse where it's protected from, it's not too hot, it's not raining, it's not cold. It's getting done quickly, efficiently, and cheaper, and then you're bringing it on site. But the financing structures today don't allow builders to finance those modular builds off-site. The lenders are only now grasping that they have to change. Some of them have changed to allow financing that says, okay, I'm financing stuff that's not on my site, and I'm rewiring my securities to allow to have securities off of product that's off-site.
Yes. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's move on. Let's just be,
Okay, so the next thing announced was a plan to leverage publicly owned land to speed up home building. So the feds are probably the largest landowner in Canada. And this plan, they say, will unlock 250,000 new homes by 2031 using Canada Post locations, federal office buildings, national defense properties, etc.
I think we have the normal issues we have with any office conversion plan. It sounds great in theory, but if you want to keep the building itself, it's not easy to convert that into residential homes. Oftentimes you're better off just knocking it down, and then does the financial model make sense? My other question here is whether the federal land is located in the spots that you want, that you want residential development to happen. There's not always an easy place. Federal government lands can be in places where there's not a good use for residential lands there.
The other point here is that they want to keep the land in their ownership instead of selling it to the bidder. So that can create another problem on the financing side, I'm sure, when you're putting up new builds as well, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of projects.
Laura and Fran, I think this is just like bureaucratic people who don't particularly understand the business coming up with ideas, right? I mean, think about the post offices that you've seen that they're not really going to convert. And if you got to turn them down, you're starting at square one. They're not vending them into the deal and giving it to you for free. And if there are, there'll be all kinds of strings attached to it, blah, 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 right? So they've got to let private industry solve this problem by giving private industry the tools. And it's not saying, here's the post office, and you can see the one on the left-hand side, that probably looks like most of them, right? And so on, right? Fran, go back one slide. What was that? So post office land, okay. National defense lands. Sometimes, I mean, we have sold one a military base in southwestern Ontario that had 300 houses on it, and they're now 300 rentals, right? So where they're, but a lot of times military bases, they're in Cold Lake, right? Alberta, places like that. They're typically not, great. And then converting unused federal offices, man, that is just a hard one, right? Office conversion is a tough gig. Ask anyone who's doing it. So these are a little bit window dressing, and probably are never going to happen.
No.
Okay, let's go.
So this one already happened, right? So this is about accelerating investment to build more. So they did remove the GST from new rental housing projects and gave them low cost financing for new apartments and so on. So this has moved the benchmark a bit, I guess, in terms, but then it got offset, I think, by interest rates. So
I think it was a great start to remove the GST from the process. What I understood, and maybe Laura, you can comment on this, it was announced, but has that actually been passed into law?
I think there's still some confusion about when projects that are already in the pipeline will be entitled to it. I think we're going to be seeing over the next couple of months, 6 months maybe, where is this actually going to be what the feds promised us at the beginning? There was so much excitement when it was announced, and the devil's in the details here. And so we're going to have to wait and see how it's applied to actual projects. And that's really frustrating for developers.
It is. We're submitting projects on behalf of developers on the assumption that the GST will not be charged, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And so the loans are getting approved without it being charged. And if it doesn't get passed into law or modified, now the builder's stuck with that additional cost that's not being financed.
yeah.
So I guess I want to get back to, and it's not going to really put any money in anybody's pocket, but how we got here. So who brought in the GST, HST? I think it was Mulrooney, right?
Yes.
I don't remember the year, but it was 20, 30 years ago, something like that. Michelle, you'll remember, right? So when they brought it in, there were input costs, and so on, and they were supposed to balance each other out, except in rental. Because you got all this HST and GST, but you couldn't pass it on to your rents, right? So they added a tax 20, 30 years ago, and now they're removing it. We're all happy, right? Like that's kind of how we become trained, right? To do this thing. Yeah.
And
okay.
only temporarily, right? It's not.
And it's only for 5 years, right? So 20, 30 years ago, we had no tax at all. Then we brought in this tax that we didn't allow you to pass on, the way we allowed every other industry to do it. And now we're giving you a 5-year reprieve, and we want you to be happy. Who said that? You'll own nothing and be happy? It was some European guy said that. Okay, all right. So the GST is generally a positive move, right? But it's only rolled back to things to the way that they used to be anyways, right? And it's only for 5 years going forward, right? And so developers want to have certainty. So if it takes, and Laura, how long does it take to take a post office and tear it down, get the zoning done, and put a shovel in the ground?
Well, you're going to go through a municipal process, and development is local. And I think that's what the feds forget sometimes. Development is local. We are dealing with local municipalities when we are rezoning land, when we're getting building permits. And, the resistance of a local municipality may, derail a particular project, even though the feds want it to happen and the private developer wants it to happen.
So it could take 5.1 years, right? And this is a 5-year program.
But building on that, on the next slide, you can see that they have taken that GST exemption, and they have expanded that also to include new student residences to, you know, because we're growing or trying to trying to level out the number of international students, but it's still a problem.
But again, let's just call that a little tinkering, right? We've got a housing crisis, right? It's been defined that way. A crisis requires more than just slightly upping the dose of the medication, right? All right, next slide. We got to the, I think the next one is the capital gains.
Nope, no, next one is about,
Oh, yes.
these are for builders. So the government is also increasing the capital cost allowance for purpose-built rentals from 4% to 10% to directly subsidize new construction. So it's meant to move projects from being unfeasible to feasible through increased after-tax returns on their investment. It doesn't change, it just accelerates it.
Right. So Michelle and Laura, when I look at most pro formas of the developers and they look at their profit, okay, they rarely look at their after-tax profit. I mean, they should be, but typically that's kind of, oh yeah, okay, I'll have this margin, right? And so most developers aren't so yes, okay, so yes, this is a good thing. The depreciation remains the same, but you get to accelerate it, but you get to kick it in faster. Your depreciation expense gets kicked in faster, right? And that depreciation expense shelters any cash flow you get from the building, right? That's so explained to everybody. The thing is, these buildings really don't cash flow that much in the first 5 years, right? So you're getting this.
You're hitting the nail right on the head, Derek. Especially
what I do, Michelle.
The MLI Select program. You're down to a 1.1 debt service coverage. You're using almost all your cash flow from the building just to support the debt. So there's not much left over. Increasing the capital cost from 4 to 10 will shelter some of that for you a little bit better. But like you said before, it really doesn't move the needle. Nobody's going to say, okay, I'm going to do this now because I'm going from 4 to 10. It doesn't factor in. It's nice to have. That's it.
It's not a tipping point, but just for our audience, if you build a building for all cash, this would actually be valuable because then you'd be getting cash flow from the building and you could shelter it through depreciation.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. For all those people that build all cash.
For all two of you in Canada that do this. Yes, yes. So what it's showing to me is just a fundamental not understanding of the problem. Fair enough? And that's, you can't solve a problem until you understand it. Okay, next slide, Fran.
The next one has to do with homes now. This is the secondary suite loan program. So this is about providing homeowners with a low interest loan of up to $40,000 to add a secondary suite to their home so that they can rent that out and build more housing or
okay. So again, Rod's going to talk about this idea of the self-funding house a little bit later on. But you know, the thing about this program is that if you took and it's a loan, it's not a gift, right? So if you took $40,000 and divided it into $410 million, that comes to around 10,000 secondary suites. Okay, again, it's tinkering. Okay, we'll come back to that later on. Okay, Fran, let's go to the next one.
Okay, this is a hornet's nest, I think. This is the renters' rights.
Right, but there are two hornet's nests coming up, right? This is the first one. Nobody, period, nobody who is on the development side of this business wants to see a Canadian renter's bill of rights. Because what it says is the government is getting into my business. Fair enough? And I'm supposed to have a relationship with the producer and the consumer. That's how business works. Fair enough? And now you're telling me how to have a relationship with my customer who I should value, and I value them when I treat them like a customer, not like the passport office, right? I don't know if we should go into this because it's just political pandering, political buffoonery at the highest order. And it's completely counterproductive for developers to build.
Well,
Yeah, Derek,
what
I
their
just wanna
intention
say-
is,
Laura?
Sorry, I just want to say on this point, this is encroaching on the provincial jurisdiction. So
Yes.
it's going to have to be done in consultation with the province. And
Yes.
so I'm personally going to take a wait and see approach to see where whether the provinces want the feds to really encroach on their jurisdiction in this way. I'm hoping not, because I completely agree with you. I think that this is just a huge potential problem. And I think we've tried this in Ontario and we've seen it not work. You know, the rent registry and all of that nonsense that happened previously. So, you know, I'm paying careful attention to this, and we'll do an update if this goes anywhere. Let's hope that it.
Okay, you know, there's no point talking about it, and my blood pressure is going up. Next slide.
okay, the big hornet's nest. This is how do we pay for the budget with new taxation? So this is the capital gains increase, which is projected to bring in $19 billion in new taxation revenues.
Right.
But it hurts big time.
I hope everyone who's on this Zoom is listening here, because I remember the finance minister saying this affects 0.13% of the population, right? Anybody who owns a second house, a family cottage, any securities that you go and sell, and you're over 250, you're gonna be paying a higher tax on that, dude, right? So this affects, I think, a significant chunk of the baby boomers, okay? Who, when they go to cash out of some of the investments that they've made, they're going to be paying 1/3 more tax. Okay, so let me just explain first of all what the capital gains exemption is. Okay, so if you earn $100 of interest income or income from employment, you're going to pay the tax rate you're paying right now, right? And that top tax rate is 53% or something like that, right? Okay, so that's ordinary income. Now, the reason we have capital gains, speaker chair, Michelle, Laura, Frank, why do we have a capital gains exemption? Why do we treat a capital gain different than what you get paid at work for showing up every day? Why do we do it?
Because we want people to be investing in their futures, to have values that they can rely on and dispose of, to earn revenues in the future and make some money in the future.
Partly right. Laura, why?
I would just say that this is to recognize that investment income is different. It is different than earned income.
Reward risk.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, if you put your money in the bank and you get 5% interest on it, you really haven't taken any risk. We're going to tax you like ordinary income. Okay. If you put your money into a development, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to say whatever you've earned as a capital gain, half of it is not taxed. The other half is going to be taxed. Fair enough? So we're gonna so the tax rate for all intents and purposes is half. Half is not taxed and half is taxed, right? So that's what the 50% inclusion rate means. And first there wasn't one. There was no difference. Then we moved up to 50, then went to 75, then went to 50. Now it's at 66%. This is really, really a bad thing to do. Okay, because what you're saying is, despite the fact, and this doesn't affect developers, this affects every Canadian, right, who makes any money in anything that has any level of risk associated with it, right? Okay, and so what we're doing is we're taking the capital gain you've earned, and instead of saying 50% of it is free and 50% of it is taxed, we're now going to say 66% of it is taxed, right? So what that means is whatever tax you were going to get paid before has gone up by 1/3. Okay, have I made that example clear? Right? That's a significant increase in taxes. And it's not just on the ultra wealthy, right? It's on the 60 percentile, like, you know what I mean? A lot of Canadians, at some point in their life are going to have a capital gain on a second property they've owned, on a cottage, on a portfolio of securities that they own and things like that. And your taxes just went up 1/3 on that, right? That is not positive. So we're only talking about the rental industry, but I think as the entire population should be unhappy with this. And it doesn't affect a tiny, tiny fraction of the ultra rich. The ultra rich in Canada are already ticked off, right? I mean, they've been being hit all the time. Now we're moving ultra rich down to, hey, Michelle, how are you, man? You know what I mean? Laura? Yeah. Fran?
But the other thing, Derek, that I find really problematic about this is when it does come to housing, which the feds have talked so much about wanting to support,
Yes.
this is counterproductive.
Yes.
Right? This is counterproductive to building more housing, which is the key to solving the housing crisis. So if they're saying their number one priority is to encourage housing, this undoes any sort of benefit anything
Yes.
else we've been talking about will do. So it feels really counterproductive, and the implementation date that they're picking, it feels like it's going to have a retroactive effect because transactions involving apartment buildings, or any multi-residential housing, the planning stages are way longer than 6 weeks.
Way longer than 6 weeks. Correct. So let's say you decide, I've had it with Canada, okay? I'm selling my portfolio and I'm moving to Guam, right? You can't get out of this because in 6 weeks, any transaction that occurs, you're going to get caught on. True?
Well, and there are transactions that are pending right now.
Yes. Yeah.
People have, people have sold their buildings, sold their portfolios.
Right.
And we're going to have a retroactive impact. No one planned for this.
Right. So yeah, okay. So someone asked, so how do we solve this? It hasn't like been a fun webinar so far, right? It's just been like the people in charge don't get the problem, and you can't solve the problem till you get the problem, right? So let's just keep going here. Thank you all for just getting through this. Never fun delivering dumb news, is it? Yeah. Okay. So Rod and I, look, we're all, if you're on this call, you're interested in rental housing, right? Or you've had some involvement in rental housing directly and so on, right? And I think everybody's comments, like, why doesn't everybody just put in there, unload what you want to say? You're right. They don't even get the problem. They don't get the problem. They don't even know the problem to know the answer, etc. But one of the things that Rod and I have been working on is this concept of the self-funding house. And when we started this idea, my number one thesis was no government, right? And so everyone says to me, why don't you go talk to the housing minister? Why don't you go talk to Sean Fraser? Why don't you go talk to Pierre Poilievre? And quite frankly, I've resisted doing this because I'm almost feel that if we're going to solve this problem in Canada, government has to be the enabler, not the leader. Fair enough? And sometimes enabling is getting out of the way. Okay? So I'm going to have Rod come back on. This is really, the numbers are so dramatic here. And at the end, we're going to suggest 3 things that need to be done here. And, we've got, if any of you know Benjamin Tall, the deputy chief economist of CIBC, Benjamin is on side for this idea. And he wrote an article in the Globe and Mail this week on this idea, and he included us in it, right? And so, Rod, why don't we also maybe post a link in that in the chat for Benny's article. But Rod, go ahead and show the numbers here to people and explain what we're doing.
The reality is we're here today to talk about the apartment industry, the multifamily industry, and that's what we do. And this whole idea of the self-funding house ties into that one element that we've heard Fran talk about, where they're now that $40,000 for basement suites. And the reason for this is very simple. We're not changing what we're doing with apartments, but we have to acknowledge, if we solve this problem, it's multivariate. We just can't wait for apartments to be built only. And that's where the self-funding house comes in. It's the light intensifications, the addition of a basement or backyard ADU, because it addresses the one thing that apartments can't, and it's speed. It's about speed to market, and it's a way to bring new housing and affordable rent to the marketplace. And the reality is municipalities should be all over this. yet they're not. And, so we just want to complete the picture and acknowledge that the solution to this crisis and talking about affordability extends beyond just apartments. And so when Derek and I first wrote this book, we very simply wanted to address that primary question. Originally, we were thinking we were talking to only the younger generations, but the reality is it's much bigger than that. And our whole thesis is this: how do you afford a house in today's market? Very simple. Treat your home as a business by becoming a landlord. But that is a mind shift in the mindsets of all Canadians. It's not conventional, normal thinking. And secondly, how do we create more affordable rental housing quickly? The answer is with those basement apartments, those backyard ADUs. And these are those numbers that Derek was alluding to. And everybody here on this webinar will get this, but this is the aha moment that most people that have removed themselves from the dream or the concept of ever being able to afford a house, they all of a sudden go, I didn't think of it that way. And here's what it is. If you take the average house in Canada, I realize if you're here in the GTA, we're not talking about a $750,000 house, but that's the example I'm going to use here. I'm going to talk about 20% down. I'm going to talk about CMHC's, 1/3 of your income should go to shelter, no more. So that average house would require a $180,000 a year household income to support the payments and the affordability of that house. But all of a sudden, you put a basement apartment in. Let's assume a secondary market. In this case, we're assuming like a London, Kitchener, Waterloo, $1,500 rental in a basement apartment. All of a sudden, 180 shifts down to 117 of household income. So a significant dent in that. Still, maybe out of position for many Canadians. But change the concept one step further. The savvy person, the young couple who goes, this is a great way to just get in the market. Why don't we live in the basement, rent out the upstairs for almost double that? And all of a sudden, you can see how 180 became 117, became less than 60. And again, this is not for mortgage qualification. This is to just show the dynamics of what happens when you treat your house as a business by becoming a landlord. And we're not going to get into the details here, but we brought together all the experts to handle all the big objections, the big questions, landlord tenancy, down payments, all that. But there's also even the whole investment world as well, in terms of just that we're seeing already, because we have 4 developers who are already implementing this strategy in new home construction. So we're not even talking about renovation in this case. And those houses, because about 50 of them have sold already, we're seeing a significant portion, especially here in Ontario, where investors are moving away from the traditional condo market, because that's turned upside down all of a sudden, and moving into the stability of the single family home. In this case, we're dealing with self-funding houses. So that's a little bit of the concept and why you hear Derek and I mentioning it. It has a place in the solution for the affordability crisis. It's not a change of direction for us. It's an inclusion in why we've actually created a company now. It's a standalone company that's going to be handled by other staff and everybody else because of the demand. And I'll end off on this. This is actually what Derek was talking about yesterday. Benjamin Tall wrote that article. He's a deputy chief economist with CIBC. Came out in the Globe and Mail, and the bottom line was he just said this is one of 2 key strategies for solving our housing crisis. I'm not going to tell you what the other one is, because our panel is going to come back on here and talk about it here in the next slide. Anything else you wanted to say, Derek, before I'm going to turn back things over to you?
No, Rod, but I think I would just ask everybody on this call's help. Okay. If you have a thought, an idea, or more importantly, a relationship that could help us change the mindset of the average Canadian to take charge of their life and realize that, yes, the ability of home ownership for those of us who are baby boomers, probably most of us on this call are, we were able to afford a house on our regular income and things like that. Your children today can't. So how do your children ever afford a house? They become landlords, right? And they're going to have to own the business in a sense here to do this. But that's the way that we believe you can afford a house without, we don't even need that 40,000 loan from the government, friend. Fair enough? Because the numbers pencil out without the government. Ford did the right thing. Premiers are doing the right thing. And in the US, they're doing the right thing. Is they're changing the density to gentle density to allow duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes on single family lots, legal, properly built, to fire code. and things like that. So we really think that this is a pretty significant solution here, but it's a mind shift to about taking responsibility and not letting the government solve the housing problem, because that's what's happened. We even the conservatives, I like, we're waiting to come in and solve the housing crisis. Housing problem has to be solved by us, has to be solved by the private sector.
And Derek, I just want to just chime in because we got a great question in the chat box from Zenek, and talking about great concept, but the barrier is financial institutions will not recognize the rental income. We have a solution. We've been able to garner some relationships that tackle that barrier, Derek.
Right. So what Rod and I have done, and it really has been a long, hard journey for us for the last 18 months. We have gone to the 5 major Canadian banks, and we have at the senior level, and it takes a while just to get to the senior level. We have gotten to the senior level now of 3 of the 5 banks, okay? And they are all interested in doing this. And we're going to be rolling out test pilot programs where they're going to recognize the income. Okay, so they're going to say, and so if you go back that example that Rod showed earlier, they're going to that income of $1,500 per month, and they're going to take income, recognize it towards your mortgage payment, right? So here's what Rod and I did and thought. Rather than everyone's talking about, we have to drop the price of housing. So we've got to make the houses smaller. We've got to use different materials, blah, 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 blah. Rod and I just said, why don't we try and raise people's income? So we're looking to the other end of it and say, and dropping the price of housing, because it's not going to drop to 80%, okay? The way, to be affordable the way it was for me when I was in my 20s. Let's solve the income problem as opposed to the price of the house problem. How do we raise the income of the buyer? Well, and that's what we did. So the only way to raise the income, practically speaking, is to generate rental revenue. And then generating rental revenue was good enough, but then you also need the banks to recognize it. And I believe that 1 year from today, maybe shorter, you're going to be able to find at the branch offices programs that will recognize the income. As we went down the road on that, we started realizing, okay, so we kept thinking about the first-time home buyer, the converter. We said, wait a minute, the renter who's paying $2,500 per month, if they can get $1,500 a month, now that gives a total of $4,000 per month to support this debt, right? So a number of things have changed that way. Rod, any more you want to add to that?
No, I think that's really good. And I think that, I think 2 big barriers have been conquered. Number one is what you just talked about with the financing and getting the banks to work with us on pilot projects. And number 2 is, the whole idea of realizing that we have to bring experts together to educate the buyers. Remember, we're talking to, an audience here of developers, but the reality is there's a big education component that we're trying to tackle by just educating buyers to let them know it is possible to own a house in today's economy, but just not with conventional thinking. That's the end of the story.
Yes. And by the way, whoever asked that question, great question. The next fear, let's assume we get the banks on side, and I believe that we will get them on side. The next fear is the fear of becoming a landlord. Okay. And again, we'll talk about another seminar. Rod, let's get to our last slide here. Let's go to where we think the answer is now. We spent, way too long talking about what doesn't work. Let's talk about some major programs that could work. Okay, and Michelle, Laura, and Fran, I'm going to suggest that there are 3 things that could be done here that would cost very little, that would require very little administration, and that could spur rental housing. Okay, the first is reintroduce the MERV that came and then the program was ended. And the MERV program, and so the reason I like this is because you just have to dust it off. You don't need to create a whole program. You don't need committees. You can say, we're just going to bring in a new program, okay? And what the MERV program does is it allows investors to write off all their soft costs in year 1 against other income. So Michelle, when you build an apartment building today, and Laura, Fran, it's about 30% soft cost, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's very close to that. And in fact, the MERB program, which came out in the 70s, because there was a similar situation in the market where there wasn't,
Yes.
and there was a housing crisis in the 70s. The MERB program came out to address that, and it created just about 200,000 homes in a very short period of time. That was 5 years. And back then, that's a lot of homes. You're able to deduct development costs and rental losses against all your taxable income. The biggest, difficulty with the MERB program is, again, like Laura was saying, the municipalities didn't log on to this, and it was still took tremendously long to get this done. But the MERB program, combined with what the government is trying to do now, incentivize municipalities, providing money to them to act quicker, to get the approval process down to 12 months instead of 36 months. I think dusting this off makes a lot of sense.
Laura, what are your comments on the MERB program?
I don't have any comments really with how it was operated. It was
Yes.
gone before my time, but I do think that programs that worked historically, the industry, like the costs have gone up, but the fundamentals are still there. The factors that drive profits, that drive developers to build, are still there. And so if things have worked in the past, just because it was someone else's idea, government doesn't
Yes.
need to be afraid to adopt it. And,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
because they won't be able to get credit
Yep.
for it.
Yeah. So the MERB, the second thought, and this is what Benjamin about, he said 2 ideas that could really put a program are the self-funding house and bringing in a US style program called the 1031 rollover. So what the 1031 rollover says is that if you sell an asset and you reinvest in that asset in a relatively short period of time, within 1 year, then you don't pay any taxes. You roll all your money into it. Fair enough? Now, eventually, when you do sell, you pay your taxes. But what if you said in Canada that if you were an apartment owner and you are right now in tax jail, and the tax jail just got worse, right, with the capital gains going up to 66%. If you sold your apartment building and you reinvested in new construction, we would allow you to take all that money, pay no tax on it, and put it into new construction. That would be a significant change. And they're not selling their building anyways. Okay, so you're not getting the taxes from it. Certainly not at 66%. It's going to slow transactions. You'd have more transactions, and that money would be rolled over into new apartment construction. It really would make a lot of sense. And thank you, Sabi. Yes. And the last one would be for municipalities. Okay, municipalities have got an empty parking lot sitting there, getting essentially no taxes. If you build an apartment building on that, it will be generating significant tax revenue for you, which you are not getting right now. All you need to do is defer those taxes for 10 years. And the first 10 years of owning an apartment building are the hardest 10 years. Okay, I can afford to pay taxes in my 11th year, my 25th year, right? But in my first, second, and third year, that tax bill is punishing. Municipal taxes make up 30% of your operating costs. Okay, and so we think the combination of the MERB program, 1031 rollovers, which would get people to sell their existing buildings and reinvest in new construction, and the municipalities charging no municipal taxes for, let's say, the first 10 years, or phase them in or something like that, right? That is all we need. And we don't need it. We don't need any post offices. We don't need you designing wartime housing. We don't need the interference, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Michelle, Laura, Fran, last words to you. I'm going to go take a Prozac.
Well, on my end, I think overall, the budget is sort of neutral. It doesn't do much, but it starts to go in the right direction. We just have to push it even further. And the builders today have to make their own efforts instead of expecting the city to provide the development charges and come to them and say, hey, here's what we have for you. You have to keep asking and forcing the municipalities, the cities, the provinces, the regions to accommodate you. The budgets, amendments, other than the capital gains, is in the right direction. And even the capital gains, just my little 2 cents on this. What it's likely to do is keep people from selling. So
Yes.
if you're expecting to get revenue, you're not going to get revenue
Exactly.
anytime soon. But that's my 2 cents worth.
You know, Michelle, if they had been smart enough, they should have said the capital gains exemption will kick in January 1st, 2025. Okay? And all these people say, well, we better get the heck out now. They'd all sell. Yeah, you'd get 50% of the, you see what I'm saying? You would raise more tax that way. This way, people just aren't going to sell. Okay, Laura Gare, last word, and Fran, we'll give you last word and we'll wrap it up. Laura?
I want the feds to try to understand the problem and where they can help out. And the two biggest things I would like the feds to help with are around the operations side, so the landlord and tenant board in Ontario, and really those barriers, those costs associated with those the broken system are huge. And the other one is the planning system and recognizing that development is local, and let's, use the feds can have a lot of impact if they recognize that they aren't the ones that are going to solve this problem. But like you said, Derek, they can enable it, but they have to have the insight of the industry. They have to understand what the problem is before they can help, because otherwise they're just throwing things out there that may or may not work. And I'm sure a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into coming up with some of these programs that aren't going to move the needle as much as streamlining the development process or fixing the LTV.
Yes. Fran, you are talking to developers every day. We're doing feasibility studies for them. What's your last comment here?
Well, the private sector are the builders. And
Yes.
so what we need to have is, you need a government to see those private sector developers as partners, as opposed to a source of new taxation. So
Yes.
unless we start working on this together and everybody talks the talk about, working at all levels of government with the private sector, we're not there because we're counterproductive.
Yeah. Well, okay, all right, great. I think we've gone through our full hour here. I had really had some expectation that something good was going to come out of this, because so much noise has been made, so much discussion has happened, and this is the best shot that we took at solving what is a crisis, and we just keep going here, and the land is strong. Rod, thanks for setting this up. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Have a good day, everybody. Thank you, speakers. Appreciate your time and
thank
energy.
you all for joining us. And we appreciate it. Thank you.